A very good evening and a warm welcome to the Biz RoundUp on another weekend. I'm Ashingsani Veerasinghe. Let's have a look at the headlines for today. President steers revival of the Export Development Council after a lapse of 28 years. $2.2 billion light rail transit project suspended. Country is aiming at an economic growth of 1% by the end of this year, State Minister assures. News in detail. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa outlines the necessity of creating new market opportunities needed for diversification in markets and products in exports. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa made these observations during a discussion of the Export Development Council, which was held last Wednesday after a lapse of 28 years. The first meeting of the Export Development Council, which was held under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, focused on resolving issues related to exports in tandem with the National Export Strategy to be a game changer in the post-COVID-19 economic transformation of Sri Lanka. President Rajapaksa outlined the responsibility of the Council in creating new market opportunities needed for diversification in markets and products, adding that many of the signed international trade agreements are not favorable for Sri Lanka. Evaluating export data over the last couple of decades, President Rajapaksa pointed out that although exports have grown, exports to the gross domestic production has not increased. The areas the Export Development Council discussed included the removal of para-tariffs on industrial raw materials to make exports more competitive, introduction of an export reward scheme to encourage export community, appointment a trade facilitation committee to address issues swiftly, establish one-stop shop to expedite trade facilitation and promotion of export processing villages countrywide to enhance capacity. Accordingly, the export reward scheme will be applicable from the 1st of October 2020 to the 31st of March 2021, where SME exporters will get 3.5% of the incremental export turnover of the same period a year ago and 2% for large exporters of the incremental export turnover for the same period. The Export Development Board announces that it will make a formal announcement with all details in the immediate future for the export community. As another measure to encourage the inflow of foreign currency into the country, the cabinet approval has been given on Monday to facilitate non-residents to invest in government securities subject to a few conditions. Consequently, cabinet approval has been given to introduce US dollar and Sri Lankan rupee buying and selling exchange facilities for 1 or 2 years by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank. Hence, the Cabinet of Ministers has approved the proposal presented by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who heads the Finance Ministry, to take several measures to minimize the foreign exchange risk that may occur to licensed commercial banks. Thus, this facility is provided under the condition of conducting the initial foreign exchange transaction and subsequent exchange transaction at the same exchange rate. Moreover, in the event of selling the government securities prior to maturity, the same exchange rate at the time of buying will be applicable but subjected to a penalty. Significantly, this special facility is valid only if there is foreign exchange inflow to the country and subject to a minimum investment of $25 million and a maximum of $1 billion. In the case of depreciation of the exchange rate of the US dollar against the Sri Lanka rupee during the applicable period, the central bank will compensate the loss incurred when transferring its dividends to the treasury in the future. This is because any loss that could be incurred to the central bank is considered as a cost to the treasury. Claiming that a recession is officially declared if a state has negative economic growth for 2 consecutive quarters, Samagi Jana Balawegaya parliamentarian and former State Minister of Finance Eran Wickramaratne asked the government why the GDP rate of the country in the second quarter is not yet declared. However, addressing the Parliament last Tuesday, State Minister for Finance and Capital Markets and Public Enterprise Reforms Ajit Niwad Cabral stresses that Sri Lanka is targeting an economic growth of 1% by the end of this year, and such a rate would lead the country towards the path of recovery.
විරේකියාව පළවෙනි කාර්තුවේ 5.7යි මේ පසුගිය අවුරුදු 10 තුල වැඩිම විරැකියාව තිබුණේ 2020 පළවෙනි කාර්තුවේ. ඒ දත්තත් ආවේ තුන්වෙනි කාර්තුවේ. දෙවෙනි කාර්තුවේ දත්ත ඇවිල්ලා නැහැ. Officially a recession is declared when you have minus growth in 2 quarters. Already the first quarter is 1.6% minus. The second quarter is not yet declared. I'm asking the question why it hasn't been declared. Because officially, if we declare 2 quarters of minus growth, then that country is classified as a country which has a recession. These data must not be manipulated. This data must be provided.
We have a challenge in our hands with regard to the external account. We have already spoken to several investors from all over the world. We continue to engage with them, and we are constantly keeping them abreast of the developments that are taking place in our country. We believe that in that quest, that within a few more weeks, we would see the monies coming back into the Sri Lankan economy in the form of investments as well as foreign direct investments. We have seen the trend movement, the investments into the treasury bills and treasury bonds for the first time in 7 months has once again started to come back. We have seen foreign investors stirring once again. They are keen to come back into Sri Lanka because the local investors are today making purchases of the shares in droves. So the trend has once again reversed in our favor. බොහෝ දෙනෙක් හිතන්නට ඇති මේ වසරේදී අපේ රටේ ආර්ථික වර්ධන වේගය අඩු වෙයි කියලා. අඩු වුණා තමයි කොවිඩ් වසංගතය නිසා අපිට දෙච්ච කටයුතු නිසා. ඒ වුණත් මම හිතන්නේ මේ වසරේදී අපිට සමහර විට බොහෝ අවස්ථාවලදී මේ රටේ වර්ධන වේගය 100%ක්වත් අපිට වාර්තා කරගන්න හැකි වෙයි කියලා මම හිතනවා. මුළු ලෝකයේම ආර්ථිකයේ වශයෙන් 4.5ක පමණ අවපාතයකට යොමු වෙන අවස්ථාවකදී ශ්‍රී ලංකාවට පුළුවන් නම් එවැනි තත්ත්වයක් සකස් කරගන්නට මම හිතන්නේ ඒක අපි දකින්නේ ඉතාමත් හොඳ දෙයක් හැටියට.
Moving into more news, a letter issued by the Presidential Secretariat states that the proposed $2.2 billion light rail transit project has been suspended by the government with immediate effect, claiming that the project is costly and that it's not the best cost-effective transport solution for the urban Colombo transportation infrastructure. The project to set up a 17 kilometers long LRT line between Colombo and Malabe was to be partly funded with a $1.85 billion loan from Japan International Cooperation Agency, which is commonly known as JICA, at a concessionary interest rate of 0.01%. The loan was to be repayable with 40 years and had a 12-year grace period. Later, the government announced that the project would be carried out as a private-public partnership, converting it from a loan project to an investor project. In the meantime, Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, who served as the cabinet spokesman of the interim government, said the construction of the track will take place in the future at a lower cost and with fewer disruptions. However, the letter suspending the project added that a suitable solution can be worked out with the Urban Development and Housing Ministry and the National Planning Department of the Finance Ministry. We'll now take a short break. Welcome back after the break. In keeping with the Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor manifesto by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, People's Bank begins to accept fingerprints of pensioners for verification purposes. Accordingly, People's Bank becomes the first state bank to accept fingerprints for verification purposes, replacing the conventional life certificate. Department of Pensions recently introduced a facility that enables pensioners to use their fingerprint as verification instead of the time-consuming process of obtaining and submitting a life certificate to the department. Accordingly, the People's Bank, following the guidelines put forward by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, joined in effort of utilizing technology to enhance the efficiency and output of the state sector. With this new facility, any of the nearly 650,000 pensioners in the country, irrespective of whether they are a People's Bank customer or not, can walk into any of the selected People's Bank branches and conveniently provide their fingerprint on a specialized electronic device. Such fingerprint is accepted as equivalent to the submission of the life certificate and is instantly updated in the Department of Pensions records. The facility is initially available at 75 People's Bank branches across the island and will be subsequently expanded to other branches in the future. The new technology-driven process using the fingerprint is a welcome relief to all pensioners as they will be able to attend to this verification matter conveniently by making a quick visit to a People's Bank branch. The obtaining of the life certificate by the pensioner is annual occurrence and plays an important role in the Department of Pensions efforts to regulate the process of pension payments. Pensioners can call People's Bank on its hotline of 1961 or visit www.peoplesbank.lk for more information. In the meantime, Professor Charita Herath has been appointed as the new chairman of the Committee on Public Enterprises last Tuesday. Moreover, leader of Lanka Sama Samaja Party, Professor Tissa Vitarana, is appointed as the new chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts of the 9th Parliament of Sri Lanka. Professor Charita Herath's name was proposed by Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage to head the COPE and it was seconded by State Minister Jayantha Samaravira. Thereby, the other members of the COPE are Mahinda Amaravira, Mahindananda Alutgamage, Rohit Abegunawardena, Susil Premajayantha, Dilum Amunugama, Indika Anuruddha Herath, Sarath Veerasekara, D.V. Chanaka, Dr. Nalaka Godaheva, Ajit Niwad Cabral, Rauf Hakim, Andra Disanayaka, Partli Champika Ranavaka, Jagat Pushpakumara, Iran Vikramaratna, Ranjan Ramanayaka, Nalin Bandara Jayamaha, S.M. Marikkar, Premanath C. Dolavatta and Shanakian Rasamanikam. Thereby, Professor Tissa Vitarana has been appointed as the new chairman of the Committee on Public Accounts. He was nominated to the position by State Minister Lasantha Alagiyawanna, while it was seconded by Minister Udaya Gammampila. The other members to the Committee on Public Accounts include Udaya Gammampila, Duminda Disanayaka, Dayasiri Jayasekara, Lasantha Alagiyawanna, Dr. Sudarshani Fernandopulle, Shehan Sem Singha, Prasanna Ranavira, Tissa Attanayaka, Harin Fernando, Niroshan Pereira, Faisal Qasim, Ashok Abe Singha, Buddhika Patrana, K. Kader Mastan, Sivanyanam Sritharan, Dr. Upul Galappatti, B.Y.G. Ratnasekara, Veerasumana Veerasinghe, Professor Ranjit Bandara, Muhammad Muzamil and Dr. Harini Amarasurya. Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment announces that a new system has been introduced to grant the final approval for migrant workers who have lost their jobs in various countries due to the COVID-19 pandemic to take up another job in the same country. Accordingly, the new procedure will enable workers who have lost their jobs abroad due to the pandemic and are unable to return to Sri Lanka at the end of the employment contract period to be given the necessary formal approval to take up another job in that country. Necessary approval and issuance of security stamp to the passport can be obtained from the Labour Welfare Division of the respective embassy of Sri Lanka in the country where the worker is located. The facility can be obtained after the required documents are sent by the foreign employment agents in Sri Lanka to the foreign agents at the place where the worker hopes to work. Nevertheless, the family background report required for the domestic workers are not required in registering for a new job. Moving on, it is noted that the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Brasilia has recently finalized the certification process for the export of the cinnamon from Sri Lanka to Brazil in bark form with Brazilian authorities. Accordingly, Sri Lankan exporters who had difficulties until now in exporting Sri Lankan cinnamon in bark form to Brazil can export the product by furnishing the necessary phytosanitary certificate issued by the National Plant Quarantine Service Office in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka cinnamon exporters can claim 5% duty preference under the Global System of Trade Preferences Agreement from Brazil, and therefore the companies that are interested in exporting cinnamon in bark form can consult with the Department of Commerce to receive GSTP certificate. The Board of Investment of Sri Lanka signs an agreement to build a 160-room 3-star lean luxury hotel in Kandy with an investment of $29.32 million.
Accordingly, the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka signed the agreement with Indra Hotels and Resorts Kandy Private Limited, which is a joint venture between John Keells Hotels and Indra Traders. The agreement was signed on behalf of the BOI by its chairman, Susantha Ratnayake, and chairman of Indra Hotels and Resorts Kandy Private Limited, Indra Silva. The $29.32 million project will facilitate the building of the second lean luxury property, which is expected to be completed in mid-2022. It will feature services, facilities and offerings including an expansive rooftop bar and swimming pool, as well as a restaurant that will serve local and international cuisine on both buffet and a la carte basis. Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts initiated the lean luxury concept and segment to Sri Lanka in 2014 with Cinnamon Red Colombo, and with the addition of this new property in the hill capital, Cinnamon Red Kandy will become the first and only LEED Gold certified hotel in Kandy. The investment augurs confidence in the destination, looking beyond the current crisis, given the significance that the sector plays in the country's economy, and it is also aligned to the government's overall vision of generating a revenue of $10 billion by 2025.
We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back after the break. Sri Lanka Tea Board states that the national tea production in the country in August this year has decreased by 14% in comparison to the production in the same month last year. Accordingly, Sri Lanka Tea Board shows that the tea production in this year's August is nearly 22 million kilograms in comparison to 26 million kilograms in August 2019. Thus, it shows a decrease of 3,774,285 kilograms, which accounts to 14% decrease against the corresponding month of 2019. Consequently, with the fall of the overall tea production, the production of the high-grown, low-grown and medium-grown tea sectors have decreased in the previous month in comparison to August 2019. Then the cumulative tea production for the first 8 months shows a decline of 15% against that of the last year. Now a subject expert at First Capital Holdings will join us, bringing you the usual analysis and the forecast on the trading of the stock market.
This week, market started mainly with the index being in the green territory, while turnover levels continue to exceed rupees 3 billion mark in most of the days. We saw that mainly the interest is mainly coming from the retail investors, mainly centered on the mid-cap counters. Banking and capital goods contributed to uplift the turnover. However, foreign investors continue to remain as net sellers with low to moderate participation. At the same time, during this week, we saw that index is breaking the short-term psychological level of 5,800, while turnover level was mainly dominated by big-cap counters like John Keel's, Haley's, Brown's Investments, Hemas, Axis and Expo, and top 3 banks, Commercial, HNB and Sampath. We also witnessed year-to-date net foreign outflows surpassing the rupees 35 billion mark on Thursday, while foreign participation continued to be at minimum. We expect a bit of correction in the market considering the high level of interest and activity seen during this week. Activities are mainly expected to be driven by retail investors, while foreign investors are continue to be on a lackluster mood with low participation.
And that's all the news for today. See you tomorrow with State of Business at 7:45 p.m. Until then, take care. Good night.